My name is Jeff Kuhn, and thanks for coming, everyone. I'm sorry that this is in a small room with lots of life. If you feel like you can't hear or see, there's a room above us which has a video link to Svetlana's talk, and you'll also ask questions from upstairs too. We'll relay them back down here.
How can we do that?
I'll run back and forth. It'll be fine. It's a privilege and an honor to have Frau Dr. Professor Director Svetlana Berdyugina here to give the public talk this month. She got her equivalent to our PhD from St. Petersburg in 1994 in astronomy in a field related to, actually I don't know, it was stars, wasn't it? It wasn't solar physics. It was stars. She went on to the Crimean Astrophysical Observatory for about 10 years, where she worked as an astronomer doing problems related to stars and magnetism in stars. Then she went to Finland, Oulu, I think for about 6 years, where she continued her studies in stars. From there she went to the ETH in Zurich, Switzerland, where she was a professor working in problems. Did she get the message? Oh, okay. So from Zurich was studies of the sun and magnetism in the sun in particular. And that's where I learned of her work. And we did a couple of things related to the studies of polarized light. From there, she's gone to Freiburg, where she's a director there at the Kiepenheuer Institute for Solar Physics, and is now here for 2 years as a member of the NASA Astrobiology Institute. So she's very well qualified to talk about this subject, and it is quite a pleasure to have her here tonight to tell us all about alien life. Very good.
Thank you so much for this very warm welcome. I'm really happy to be here and talk about life in such a with such a lively audience. And so every one of us, of you, interested what is life and how to find it. That's why you come here, don't you? So in the leaflet we had these questions. I'm sure you read them. What is life? What are the building blocks of life? And how life emerged on the Earth and where else we can look for it? And how this life, if we can find it, whether it's similar or different to life on the Earth. So all these questions we are going to discuss today. And we look first, I use this mouse, I'm sorry, I'm surrounded by people here, it's so nice. So first, let's look at this diagram. What do we know about emergence of life on the Earth? We know that Earth has formed 4.5 billion years ago, and life emerged almost immediately after that in this time scale, let's say. So after less than 500 million years, the first formed lives already existed on the Earth. We don't know if they were earlier there, but we find at this time, at 3.8 billion years ago, we find first forms of life on the Earth. And that life was microscopic, single cellular life. And it's existed for more than 3 billion years on the Earth until the macroscopic life emerged. So here, at 500 million years ago, we have this so-called Cambrian explosion, when the macroscopic life emerged in the ocean and then invaded land, and here how we come. And yes, you have questions?
A type of singularity.
What time? What?
I'd say a type of singularity which we're approaching now in a different sense as we accumulate information and we get to a point where things expand very rapidly.
Yes. I mean, it goes exponentially. Yes. Can it be slower than that? So yes, and what I want to emphasize using this diagram, that most of the time on Earth It was microscopic life. So when we say we want to find life somewhere else, on other planets, we have to remember that fact.
Svetlana, can you speak louder?
Okay. Oh.
Gain control on that thing anyway.
You mean that they hear me on the second floor? All right. So when we talk about this finding life on other planets, we have to remember that life on Earth dominated the Earth all the time. It was microscopic life, single cell life. So what we can hope now is that most probably if we find any life, it will be single cell, very small life. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So first question, what is life? When you've seen announcement of this talk, what did you think? What is life? I want to hear you now.
Some sort of self-reproducing entity.
That's a bingo. Next one. Chemical life, yeah. So chemical reactions is something important for life, but not defining it. It's important, but there are other processes, chemical processes, which is not life as well, yeah. But it's important. Okay.
You can take the energy in the environment and build more complicated structures.
Yes.
Where you look for a little decrease in entropy, local.
That sounds very good. So something which can utilize energy and transform itself. This is very important. This is what we will talk about. Okay, so what about kids? Do you know? Do you want to answer? What do you think is life? You don't know? Do you think this is life? What do you think? You don't know, but then you will learn. That's great. Yes? It looks like that, indeed, but it is. These are colonies of microbes we will talk about today. They call stromatolites, and they look like lava rocks. Yes. All right. So we continue. Many scientists ask this question: what is life? How to define it? And there are many different definitions of it. Then, if we pick one, pick the other one, every definition has a problem. Basically, I give you this most adopted formulation of life, that two key features which are important: self-replication, as you mentioned, and also capacity to undergo evolution, natural selection, improvement. Yes?
But this is a virus, which isn't life.
Exactly. So, as I said, there is no definition of life which would satisfy every form of life we know. And another example here, the mule. It's an offspring of the horse and the donkey. It's certainly alive, but it cannot reproduce itself. So that is kind of exceptional cases.
But looking at it a little wider picture, if you get a horse and a donkey together, then you get another fuel. So
Then you get another form of life. That's right. So what I want to say, yes, we can pick up different conditions for life, but it seems like there is no unique, well-defining feature to say what is life and what is not life. This is really hard to say, even though we are ourselves life. Yes?
would metabolism be an important feature?
It's an important feature, yes. This is what earlier was said, employing energy utilizing energy for changing processes, yes?
Well, I'd like to think of it as a method of information exchange, something that actually is able to accumulate information and pass it on.
That's right. This is very important.
Which means a computer, in a certain sense, could be considered to be alive.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes. In my talk, I will talk about life in the sense of terrestrial life based on chemical reactions. But in principle, if we go further in terms of information, even some computer programs can be considered life because they can recreate themselves, they can evolve, and in this definition would satisfy. What did you want to ask?
Can you define life as like a cell? Because even though a mule can't self-reproduce, it's made of cells which are reproducing and growing and expanding and duplicating themselves.
That's a good point. Yes, that is a very good point. If we take a sub elements of that life, they will be definitely life. Yes.
Also self-sustaining.
Yes.
Sustain itself.
Exactly. Yeah. Also that. I am very pleased to hear that you're well prepared for this lecture. So you passed my exam, but there will be more. There will be more questions. I want you to participate. This one you passed. Okay, let's go. So what are the building blocks of life? We talk about energy, about information, about self-replication, but cells, okay, we know that cell is a building block of life, but what is inside the cell? Do you know? Amino acids, yes. Say it again?
The mitochondria.
Yeah, those things, yes. That's right. Many of those things, yes. So we just review those things. So one is important. Can you say anything behind me? First thing I want to emphasize is the chemical elements, and I have this periodic table for you here. Just back to school, like recall the chemistry lessons. So we know that carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen are very important elements in life. They're all over. So this is CHON. They sometimes called CHON elements for shortness. They are. And this, in addition to that, maybe it's not even accidentally, that these elements are most abundant in the universe. These elements, hydrogen was created in the Big Bang, and carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, they were created inside stars. And these are most abundant elements. If we look all over the universe, we find these elements. And of course, maybe, as I say, it's not accidental that we look inside us and we find these elements as well, most abundant. And what we call organic matter is the molecules based on carbon. So the combination of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, these are organic matter which we consist of, which we see this around us in beautiful Hawaiian nature. And yeah, I want to point on this periodic system again. So back to school. I want to see where these elements. So carbon is number 6. Hydrogen is number 1. Oxygen 8 and nitrogen is 7. 6, 7, 8, and 1. What does it mean? Do you remember? What does it mean? 6, 7, 8, and 1.
Protons.
Number of protons.
Like reactivity.
And number of electrons, yes. Number of protons, number of electrons. That's very good, because we need that later. So, what else? We need water for our life. We cannot live without water. Nobody mentioned that. Come on.
Well, that's a certain kind of life that you're talking about.
For our life, we need water. How long you can live without drinking? 3 days. That's right. He knows. Did you try it?
No.
No, don't try it. 3 days at most. We're so fragile. It's only 3 days. So, water. What is water? Water consists of 1 oxygen and 2 hydrogen. And this is a very unique molecule. First of all, it's one of the most abundant molecules in the universe, again, because of chemical elements, but also because of its simplicity. So we have this 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Hydrogen, they have 1 electron because it's number 1. Oxygen has 8 electrons because it's number 8. So what happens? And it has also 8 protons. So oxygen has a larger, occupies larger volume with its electrons, and it also has a larger attracting force for electrons from hydrogen. What happens is that it pulls electrons from hydrogen on its own side. As you see here, these electrons, which one of them belong to hydrogen, it most time spends here. So what we see as a result, that the charge on this molecule is not evenly distributed. We have positive charge here because of protons exposed, and negative charge here because protons from oxygen, they're surrounded by electrons. So this is like a dipole, electric dipole. We have a negative here and positive here. And what we know, if we, analogy with magnets, if we take a magnet with positive and negative poles, they attract each other. So positive attract negative and negative attract positive. And that's what happens. So when we look at water in different conditions, in ice, in liquid, in solid as ice, liquid form, and gaseous form as steam, we can see that actually in steam all molecules are separated. They free flying around. In water they have so-called hydrogen bonds. And these hydrogen bonds, they are formed due to this attraction of negative sides from hydrogen, positive sides from hydrogen and negative sides from oxygen. So they stick to each other. And that's why water is liquid, because we have these hydrogen bonds. And then in ice, we also have these hydrogen bonds, but molecules are arranged in a crystal-like structure. And compared to the water, to liquid state, that here we see the chains, for instance, of these longish chains of molecules connected together, and then another chain. So, and that's what allows the liquid actually to flow. So why do we need water? Can you answer that question? It's a solvent. We need it for chemical reactions. So we need to dissolve other substances. How does it dissolve? We have this chemical here with organic chemical, 2 carbon, 3 hydrogen, and 2 oxygen atoms. And then this water, again, water molecules, due to this hydrogen bond, start to attract to the oxygen atoms of this chemical. And you see that it sticks around and it pulls this chemical. And then it means that this chemical becomes mobile in the water. It can flow, these molecules can drag them to different places, and it can find some other chemicals to connect. And this is how chemical reactions occur. So water helps to assist the chemical reactions to happen. And that's why we need it, like a solvent for these chemical substances. Now next, what we need next? We need big organic molecules, macromolecules. We can connect many carbon and hydrogen atoms together, and we get lipids, we get amino acids, we get carbohydrates, and very complex proteins, and super complex nucleic acids, which is difficult to show even atomic scheme. It's just kind of schematically shown here, this double helix of DNA here. And what's the role of these molecules?
The DNA, the complementary strand represents the RNA, which then turns into the protein which your body uses.
DNA helps to produce proteins. How does it do it?
Encoding and replicating.
It's information. That's what I write here. It helps to preserve and transfer the information so that our bodies know what they are doing. We know how we grow. We don't control our growth, our digesting system. Our molecules know that. And that information preserved in these macroscopic molecules. And the larger molecule, the more information. So the complex systems have bigger molecules. That's kind of simple. What else specific about these molecules? There is interesting fact, which is not necessarily understood why it is so, and it's not necessarily understood in the sense that we need every form of life needs that. But what we see in life on Earth is that some organic molecules, like amino acids, they have so-called chirality. So there are the same composition of atoms, but different spatial arrangement of these atoms. So that one molecule can look like left-handed and other one is right-handed. And it's in all form of life, what we find on Earth, we use all left-handed amino acids. And this is not clear why. It can be by chance. It can be by certain selection process, which we don't know. But it seems like the life what we know has this quality. So when we look for other form of life, we may not find it at all, this preference, or we find another preference. But at least if we find this preference, this will tell us that might be life. Yes?
How do you know that the right hand exists if all of it's on the earth as well?
It's used in life. Actually, in nature exist all forms. We see them all over. So we can produce them industrially. They produced by natural processes. But what is used in our bodies, in life forms, only left-handed. Also in animals and every form of life on Earth. Yes?
Is there a special function to the right-handed ones?
Function?
Or is it just not used?
It's just not used. I mean, this is not this is simplistic. Okay, say 99% is left-handed because there is usage of right-handed sugars, for instance, but very small amount of this. Yes.
That's a really stupid question. How are you defining left-handed and right-handed?
This is relative. Okay. And just two opposite things.
Okay, but then aren't you just saying that one is the one we're using and one is not, unless you arbitrarily assigning left and right?
Well, it's defined this way, okay? It's defined this. It's like black and white, left mirror and reflection, and so on. Yes?
Since we could take all the molecules themselves, and you said, and I think it's true, you can find create the right-handed, and since we're mucking around with DNA and RNA all the time, is it possible that we could take an extremely simple life form and build a right-handed version of it, and then see
Yes?
what happens?
I'm
Has
sure-
anybody tried that?
Well, I'm sure, I don't know, it's probably tried. We cannot build any life form at all in the lab yet. We can build, who? I don't know this. Sorry.
We can
Could you
take the
repeat the
DNA.
question so they can hear them upstairs?
They can't hear the question.
So
Upstairs?
They can't hear them
Oh,
upstairs. They
repeat
hear
the
your
question.
answer, but you need to repeat the question, okay?
Okay. The question from the audience, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
They can't hear us.
Okay. Sorry.
And we're going to see if you're listening.
Okay. So the question was if we can take right-handed molecules, can we construct any life out of this? And to answer that, it's probably yes, because the idea is that we use only left-handed. Is because you assemble long molecules from the pieces which match each other. And you cannot fit in right-handed in there because it doesn't match. But if you take right-handed molecules, you can reproduce the same thing, but looking differently in space.
And the one that Bentner did, the synthetic cell, it was all standard stuff that we have now since a lot.
Okay, so was this Rick Bender?
He was mentioning the synthetic life form that
Mhm.
Bentner, the guy who
Mhm.
was heading sequencing human DNA, they made a synthetic cell. But it's all locked in.
It's all left-handed, okay.
Excuse me?
Yes?
How did electrons form? How did... Who created them?
The electrons were created in the very beginning of the universe. The question was of how electrons were created.
How...
So electrons were created from, in the beginning of the universe, from the energy, pure energy.
How was the Big Bang created?
There is no answer to that one.
We don't know, yes.
Why don't you know everything?
Well, I want you to come and tell me. I'm also learning, yes. All right, so let's go further. So what else we need to create life? We have all these macromolecules, water helping chemical reactions, but somehow we have to put them together. So, and that somehow was put together, and we don't know by whom. We believe that it's self-supporting process. We call it self-assembly. With the help of property of those molecules in the liquid environment, we believe that this kind of molecules illustrated here, they can create structures. So can create kind of spheroids like this or layers, and this would be like primitive cells, beginning of the first cells. So I give here like examples of different cells here, shapes, and you can see that there is a variety. And that somehow happened. We don't know. We have to find out. And next thing we mentioned is metabolism. So these self-supporting systems. So they created themselves, but then they have to survive. They have to go through their own life, and for that we need energy. We all need energy. We need to eat, we need to drink, and we have to sleep to recover our energy. So and that happens to every life system. So it is about utilizing energy and make it working for you. So I here only mention two types of metabolism: this photosynthesis and chemosynthesis, which are important for the beginning of the life on the Earth, and also still important for primitive life now, and for plants as well, of course. So both processes are taking the energy here from the light and here from the heat. And if you remember that heat and light, these are all electromagnetic waves. This is the same thing. So just different temperature. So we take light and we take heat, and then what happens on Earth, the organisms take carbon dioxide and take water, and from the air, carbon dioxide from the air and the water in liquid form. And in oceans, this would be the dissolved carbon dioxide and water is around. And then what is produced, water here, and also what is used in oceans is this is sulfidic acids, H2As, which is produced by volcanoes. So what happens is that here, this light, energy of the light is stored in chemical bonds in creating new chemicals, which are carbohydrates. And in the same way here, so we create sugars here, which are carbohydrates. And as a byproduct is produced oxygen here and sulfur here. So these are two processes which are taking place in different places and at different conditions, in the air, underwater, and at different temperatures. This is like room temperature or so, and this is at very high temperatures, 400 degrees.
I don't know if it's important but on the chemosynthesis, I'm not seeing a direct involvement of the heat there. Is it heat, or is it the hydrogen sulfide, the breaking down of the hydrogen sulfide, which is the energy released? Does it need heat, or is it just...
It does need heat. So the question was, does it need heat in chemosynthesis? Yes, it does need heat as a source of energy. So, all right, so this is a summary slide. What we need for life and what we think is life. So we thought that water is important, organics based on carbon is important, chirality is there, we don't know if it's important or it's a sign of it. We know that self-assembly is important, consuming energy, self-replication, and evolution. These are biosignatures. This is what we call biosignatures, which we look somewhere else. It's hard to look for evolution on our time scale, of the humanity time scale, but we can look at everything else. And of course, if we find life on many planets, I'm sure we will see also sign of evolutions, because when we detect life on many different planets in different stages of life formation, we will notice that there is some indication of evolution. Hopefully, I don't know. This is all speculations. So what are the alternatives to this? Not so many. These are very common. This is all common, like metabolism, self-replication, evolution, very general, self-assembly. What is not very general? Chirality, as I said, maybe not very general. Carbon-based organics, we need long molecules to preserve the information. That's what we know. But these molecules can be based on something else. So we need macromolecules as the information storage. And we need solvent, which is not water, actually. So let's look again at periodic table. Where the carbon is. Carbon is number 6. And it's in the group number 4. Do you remember that, group number 4? from school. 4 electrons on the outer shell. And then silicon, just below, it also has 4 electrons in the outer shell. So in principle, chemical and physical properties of carbon and silicon, they're very similar because of these 4 electrons. But there are, of course, differences. And differences are due to the fact that silicon is number 14. It has more electrons. It's a bigger atom. So its electronic shell is much bigger. And that creates some problems. So we have analog of silicon-based methane. So methane would be with the carbon here. We have analog of ethane with silicon here instead of carbon. And we have analog of benzene, but not quite, because benzene would have carbon here and connecting single hydrogen atom here and having every second bond double. And in case of silicon, it doesn't form double bonds. What it does, it connects two hydrogen atoms here. So the structure is somewhat different. And that creates problems, actually. Some very long molecules cannot be created based on silicon because it's too large, and it also has this capacity of double bonds. So it's possible, but there are buts. So, and most important is that it's suitable for low temperatures in the environment where there is no oxygen, because it will be immediately oxidized into solid form. Silicon dioxide is a solid form compared to carbon dioxide. It doesn't like water, so if there's no water around, it's good. And very low temperatures or high pressure, let's say. So this would be some places somewhere in the universe where, and also most importantly is that not enough carbon. And we know that carbon is very abundant element, and silicon as well, but not as much as carbon. What about solvents? Solvents, we know water. I showed you this. This is water. Some other, like CNO elements with hydrogen. This is ammonia with 3 hydrogen, and methane with carbon with 4 hydrogen atoms. These are analogs of water in this sense, and they are liquid at different temperatures. So ammonia is liquid at minus 50 degrees Celsius. I'm sorry, I tried to do Fahrenheit here on many slides, but not on this one. And then ethane and methane is minus 150 degrees. So it's like more than 250, minus 250 Fahrenheit. So it's very low temperatures. And still we can find places like that. For instance, Saturn moons will look, or Jupiter moons. Possible. So let's go for it. How do we search for it? What is our strategy? What would you suggest? Finding water. What else? Getting there. Okay, that's a good thing. Then we find everything. What else?
Bigger budget, more money.
Yeah, that's very important. I didn't mention it here. So naive, yeah. Okay. What do you suggest? Okay. So what I suggest, we look at early Earth again. We know there was life there. And it was different from what we've seen now, maybe. Or it's the same. We have to find out. So I show you 3 places where you probably know the little of geology, that all these continents, they were moving around, it was completely different. So when all these land masses, they were messed through the mill, basically. So they were going down, melted, and bringing up again. So many places which we see now, land places, they are much younger than the Earth age. But we find 3 very interesting places where the age of rocks is about the time, but we know that life is existed already because we find it there. This is a place called Ischua in Greenland, Barbiton in South Africa, and Pilbara in West Australia. So what we find there? In Ischua, greenstone belt. So this, yes. So in Greenland, we these are the rocks. What you see, the sedimental rocks. So these white inclusions, these are the oldest rocks here. When we look closer at it, we see something like we see something like this. No, like this. This is 50 microns scale, 50 microns. So we see some, in the cracks, we see some kind of fossilized bacteria, small spheroids there. These are fossilized bacteria. And we look close at them. This kind of bacteria at the cracks there, we see this kind of, how do we know it's bacteria? So it kind of lost its liquid and it got like old skin, you know, like cranked. So we see those cranks that we think, yes, this is the bacteria. And of course we do isotopic analysis and we confirm that this is a live thing. The problem here is that it was contaminated by much younger bacteria, so we cannot really say for sure whether it is 3.7 or younger. But in Australia, the place is very well preserved. And what we find there, it's extremely old. So this is 3.5 billion years sediments. This is how this place looks from space, this Google Earth picture. And this is how we look at, see it under microscope. We see all these multiple structures which identify themselves as part of bacteria colonies. And we also look now at these things which are as if they're alive. Now I can tell you that they are alive. And these are the oldest forms of life we know on Earth. It still exists here with us. These are stromatolites in Western Australia, in Shark Bay. This colony is about 1,000 years old. They live at places, very salty lagunas. They also, second colony is in Bahamas. Very salty water and shallow water so that there is enough light going through. Some of them underwater, some not, but because of tides they regularly get covered by water. And this is exactly the same thing at 3.5 billion years ago. Exactly the same. We see these layers of the microbes creating the just growing colonies, leaving some their products of life here, and this is how it's created. And this is the cut through as well. So this is kind of impressive. And these are important bacteria because they create oxygen. These are those bacteria which create oxygen. When you are there, you breathe and you feel how much oxygen is there. And in these places you don't want to breathe. These are not. This is smelly things. You don't want it on your shoes. So these are really bad things. But they are alive. We don't like them. They poison us. But they are thriving in those conditions. So what we find from those analyses that organisms on early Earth, they lived in all these various conditions. They loved cold environments, they like hot environments, they like acidic environments, they like alkalic environments and pressure and dry environment and everything. Just everything that was available. Life was all over. This is amazing, yeah? And these are examples of the current environment. This Yellowstone, Owens Lake, and Rio Tinto, they are horrible. But not horrible for us, but not for them. It's just paradise. So these kind of numbers here I list, they give us the range of conditions where we can expect life in other worlds. So from this list, we can say, okay, this is for sure conditions for life. Even though it's not for us, it's conditions for life. So when we go somewhere on other planets, we look at these conditions. If we find it, there is a possibility that there is some organic life there. So where do we go? This is a solar system. Where do you suggest to go? What's your suggestion? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? This is. Do you know these planets? Oops.
I don't know.
Oh, this is okay. Do you know planets in the solar system?
Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn.
Absolutely, yes. So we are here. We're planet number 3 from the sun. So I showed you. We go to Mars, yeah? We know we spent so many billions to go to Mars. And what we find there? Mars, at least it's not poisoned as other places, yeah? So we have hope there. what we see in these terrain pictures, we can determine ages of it. We see like 3.5 gigayears ago on Mars, there seems to be some kind of rivers flowing. So we see very similar to what we see on Earth, like river beds or floor structures. Then later on we see this kind of gulches with some streams down, and it seems like there was liquid there. We don't know how long, we don't know how much, whether it was water or some other liquid. Or maybe it wasn't liquid, maybe it was a sand, we don't know. But we hope it is. And like these are most recent pictures from most recent events that we see. Like here, if you can see it from behind, there was nothing in 2001 here, and then we see like a mark of a stream here in 2005. Then in 99, very clear, almost nothing there, no structure. And then the stream, 7 years later. So something happening. Whether it's water or white sand, we don't know. Or some other deposits. So that's what we want to know. And we send these missions, many missions there to Mars. And I give only very basic, very important from this point of view information here. So one important thing is that this is a map of hydrogen abundance on the Mars. So the yellow, green, and red, these are higher amounts of the hydrogen. And this indicates that this distribution shows that hydrogen comes from ice, water ice. So when water ice, water can evaporate through the surface and dissociates on hydrogen atom and OH and so on, and then we see hydrogen. So this map suggests that there is just below, about half a meter below the surface, we may find actually several hundred meters of ice of significant mass. So if Mars was warm and humid in the past, we should expect permafrost, and this hydrogen indicates that this is the permafrost existence.
Is there a correlation of the abundance of hydrogen with the elevation on Mars? It looks like with the reddish areas and all that, it looks like there might be higher elevations or places with mountains or...
I don't know that. No, I didn't look up this. It's hard to say. It's somehow, this is the southern terrain is older actually. That's what I remember. It's older, and that's maybe it has more hydrogen. I don't know, just older. And but what we should expect also is existence of carbonates, like we have it on Earth. We have all these carbonate rocks, which is the sediments from previous life forms, and we don't see this on the Mars. We didn't find so many carbonates as we expected if life there. But maybe that's not completely disappointing, because we found a lot of sulfur there. And if ocean on Mars was very acidic with lots of sulfur, then the carbonates would not form so easily. So even if life was there in ocean, the carbonates would be not there, because they would be dissolved. They would not deposit themselves. And another recent finding is the methane in the atmosphere. So these are controversial at the moment. Sometimes it's there, sometimes not. It's variable. Maybe there are seasonal changes. This is not clearly understood. That detection only exists from the Earth, from Mauna Kea, but it was not confirmed yet by landing missions. So this need to be confirmed. But there is a hope. There is hydrogen, there is methane, there is lots of frozen water there. So this is the map with the landing sites of different missions. You see that they distributed quite a lot over the different places on Mars. And the conclusions of all these missions, they are quite similar. The composition of the surface rocks and minerals is not very different from place to place. So here it's just kind of a summary what we know. The presence of water ice was confirmed by these in situ measurements by landing missions. And it was also found that the soil on Mars is somewhat alkalic, which is we're not scared of, so doesn't matter. For life on Earth, everything is possible. We can do everything. Then there are lots of salts there, but also was found perchlorite, which is, on one hand, is not good for life, what we know, but on the other hand, we have some bacteria who love the perchlorite. So I guess we have everything on Earth which find usage of every possible chemical, actually. But no organics was found yet. So we have, yes?
What about the electromagnetic fields around Mars? Have they imaged the fields of electromagnetic?
The electromagnetic fields, this is like radiation or
Or the patterns?
Oh.
Where the radiance is higher at the poles or in the centers, or if there's any sort of distribution of the magnetic fields that they've been able to see?
Well, the question is that about magnetic field, yeah? Because electromagnetic field, this is like light, radiation, and magnetic field is, well, it's different a little. So created by charges. So magnetic field is not very strong on Mars. It's very, very weak. And this is related to the fact that it has a solid core. Earth has a strong magnetic field, relatively strong for the planet, and it has magnetosphere. It protects us from the solar storms and these particles coming from sun. And this is because Earth has liquid core, so the liquid iron core, metallic core. So this kind of, and also there is circulation in the mantle. So the masses within Earth are moving, and that creates the magnetic field. In Mars, it's all solidified. It's much smaller by mass. It's like half of the size of the Earth. And it cooled down much faster than Earth. So it became solid. And the magnetic field disappeared after about 1 billion years after its formation. So this is one of the things also believed to be that if there was life on Mars, then it might disappear from the surface because the atmosphere disappeared, and that connected with the loss of the magnetic field of the planet. Okay, so we have the rover now on the Mars. Does it find something? It was landed two months ago. It just started to work. We heard on news that it just got one scoop of dirt and another scoop of dirt, found some peculiar white particle, which is not clear what is it, and so on and so on. This is the rock which was investigated already. We don't have yet results, but the goal we know. The goal is to find organics. All other previous missions, they tried. They didn't find it. So this one hopefully finds something if there is, if it's there. And the crater selected for the landing is somewhere here in the low part of the crater, Gale crater. It's because its age is 3.8 billion years, so this impact was long ago, when if life was there, it was good time. And it has kind of debris here in the bottom of the crater is some kind of mess which looks like the water was there at some point. So that was visually selected. It has clays and sulfates which form in water if water present. And this means that these clays and these sulfates, they can contain some signatures of life. So we go further. Mars is the place where we can hope for life, finding life. Fossilized from the past, or maybe even down in the ground, which is existing and thriving, like we have it on the Earth. But we can go further, and there are other places. These are icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Why they are interesting? Yes?
I saw that picture of that moon on space
This one?
Jupiter.
Yes. This is the moon.
Earth's bacteria. If that spacecraft hit it, I think it would destroy any chance of finding life on one of those moons.
Yes. If we send something there, there is a chance. So that's what I want to tell as well. Can you give my lecture? I think you're good enough to give my lecture. And Yeah, so this is Europa, the Jupiter moon, and it's covered by ice, the very thick ice of several kilometers. And underneath of it, we believe there is kind of ocean, or very soft ice, or even liquid. And why do we think so? It's because of the Voyager's missions were there, and they measured magnetic field around, and this satellite has magnetic field actually, and it has to be induced by something, and that's what believed to be induced by this ocean, that it's salty ocean down there. And the other moon, Enceladus, moon of Saturn, it actually shows us evidence of this ocean underneath, that there is this kind of geyser-like jets. They seen from spacecraft, Cassini, this picture from Cassini. And this geyser contain water and hydrocarbons. So there is indeed something going on underneath the surface ice. And NASA proposed some years ago, it's still delayed, it's a super expensive mission. If we send the cryobot to Europa and it drills down through the so the landing mission here send the drill down through the thick ice, and this cryobot which can swim in the ocean and investigate these volcanic places of the volcanic activity and find something similar what we see on Earth. That would be really exciting, but maybe in 20 years, I don't know. So another moon, which is interesting, Saturn moon, Titan. Titan is very unique. It's almost as big as Earth, and it has atmosphere, even thicker than we have it on Earth. It's 1.5 pressure, 1.5 times stronger there, so it's very thick atmosphere. But the composition of the atmosphere is different. It's mainly nitrogen. So we also have lots of nitrogen here, but we have oxygen and other molecules as well. There it's dominated by nitrogen and some amounts of methane there. And our space missions, they showed that actually where this methane comes from in the atmosphere, it evaporates from liquid, yes, it's lakes, and I say liquid general reservoirs. So these are lakes. They were found by interferometry. So the lakes, the composition of them was not measured. We just believe it is methane and ethane because we measured it from the atmosphere. And we see pictures also of these fluidal networks, very similar to Mars, isn't it? And very similar to Earth. So it's kind of rivers, lakes, no ocean there. Rivers and lakes. Not too bad. Mountains, so atmosphere, possible, but cold. It's very cold. So temperature, Fahrenheit here, minus 290. I use the online calculator, you know. So it's minus 290. I cannot imagine that temperature. That is, I don't know, it's cold, freezing cold. And so, but we still talk about life. I showed you that diagram. Methane and ethane liquid, we see that in lakes and rivers. And silicon life, maybe no oxygen there, low temperature, a lot of carbon. Maybe not silicon. It's probably still carbon-based organics, but maybe different. It can be like sugars, lipids, proteins, they all can be formed there, but super, super slow. Chemical reactions like long-living molecules, you know. Yes?
If those are lakes, wouldn't that be all iced, frozen?
No, it's because methane is liquid at
so
this
that's
temperature.
okay.
It's not water.
Okay.
Yeah. There is no water. So it's very slow. If there is life, it's super long living, and evolving also very slowly. It means that even over those 5 billions what we are around, it should be still primitive life there, or it maybe found some other ways to exist, to make it faster. So this is our solar system. Let's go further, beyond the solar system. Yes?
Before going to
Before, yes.
what do you think about Jupiter satellite, Io, that has working?
Yes. So the question is that what about Jupiter satellite Io? This satellite is very interesting because it is the other place, the only other place where we see hot volcanoes in our solar system. We see cryovolcanoes, as I showed you, but these are hot volcanoes. So they're similar to volcanoes what we have on Earth. They produce lots of sulfur, and it's all sulfidic all around. But it's warm places there, and it's possibly that we should look for life there as well. I didn't mention that, but it has to be estimated what kind of liquid is there possible to be used as solvent. So I would speculate it can be sulfur dioxide if there is lots of sulfur there, for instance. But that is something to speculate and to investigate. All right, so let's go beyond. What is outside solar system? Do you know? Yes?
Universe.
Universe.
Galaxies.
Absolutely.
Black holes.
Black holes. Many exciting places to go, isn't it?
White holes.
White holes, I don't know. Maybe not. Black holes certainly there. We didn't find any white holes yet. What about some other stars? Is okay? Not too boring? Some other stars. We have one star here, Sun. Sun is our star. As we go further, if we fly 4 years as fast as light goes, then we find another star. This is so far. So, yes, and so stars are far away. We will not be able to send their space missions to investigate planets around them. So we have to find a way how to study those planets around other stars remotely, not by analyzing them with our robots, but by analyzing the light we receive from these stars. We look again at Earth from space now. Earth is our example. This is our ruler to measure life. This is our microscope to see it. So now we look at Earth from space. This is our blue and green planet. If we just then condense this information on Earth in one single dot on the sky, what can we see? We can see water because it's a lot. Yeah, it's in the atmosphere as well. We see ozone and oxygen. We see methane and we see nitrous oxide. And these are all products of life. Oxygen, methane, and nitrous oxide, these are all products of life. They would never exist in these amounts, what we have, without life. This is called what we call non-equilibrium gases. If life is not there, these gases would be minuscule, or not at all. So we would have something different. So these gases, combination of these gases, tells us there is life. We also see green vegetation in the spectrum of chlorophyll. Here, this it shows that. Well, I don't explain you what is spectrum, okay? But we will see these green patches in the spectral signatures. And this is our spectrum of the atmosphere in different times. We know that oxygen wasn't there all the time. It appeared only 2.5 billion years ago. So if we look at planets which are much younger, or at the time, or in the shape as our Earth was more than 2.5 billion years ago, we would see something different without oxygen. But we would see methane and probably nitrous oxide. So this is signatures we see on the Earth. And this is what we can look for on planets at different, around other stars. How do we detect those planets? This is very briefly, because it's very, just to see how we detect those planets. So we can look at stars, and if there is a planet going around the star, then this is the planet, sorry. If the planet goes around the star, then the star goes around the central mass of the system. So these wobbles can be detected in velocities, and we know that from the size of this orbit of the star around the center of the mass, we can estimate the mass of the planet. We can see brightness variations of the star. if there's a planet transiting the disk of the planet, the brightness of the star drops. We've seen this during the Venus transit this year. And this is how we detect other planets as well. And we can also detect reflected light from planets. This is what I'm doing in my research. We see this reflected light when the planet goes around, it changes the phases, the same way as moon changes phases when it orbits the Earth. So we can detect that light, variations of this light. And if we detect that, we can analyze the planet in the same way, as I showed on the previous slide, as we analyze the Earth as a blue dot on the sky, the same way. So we know more than 800 exoplanets to this date. 12 of them only with mass less than 3 Earth masses. So we find bigger, much bigger planets. This is because our telescopes are still small. Even 10-meter telescopes are still small. We want bigger telescopes. To find Earth-like planets, we need much bigger telescopes. And only 12 of them kind of Earth size. How do we decide whether that planet is potentially suitable for life? So we have this concept of stellar habitable zone. That defines the orbit around the star where if we find the planet, it can have temperature on the surface which would be suitable for the water to be liquid. This is how we define the stellar habitable zone. This is a little fuzzy region. This green-blue region, this greenish region is this habitable zone. And if the planet is in the middle of it, that's a very good chance. If it's at the edges, then it depends on the atmosphere of the planet. So if it's closer here or further there, it's still possible. And even outside this zone is possible if the conditions on the planet are varied conditions. And it's interesting that the size of the zone is different for different types of stars. Have you seen that stars have colors? Have you seen it on Haleakala? Have you seen it? Have you seen red stars and yellow stars? Yeah. And you? Have you seen it? And you know that we have yellow star. Our sun is yellow star. And there are blue stars, they are much hot, and there are red stars, which are much cooler.
I wonder if I've seen VY Canis Majoris.
You've seen what?
I wonder if I've seen VY Canis Majoris.
VY Canis Majoris. Wow. I may know that star.
The largest star.
Never discovered.
Okay. Good. So what we know is that red stars are cooler. So the habitable zone is closer to the star. And blue stars, they are hotter, and the habitable zone is much further compared to the yellow stars. So we actually, with our small telescopes, we have chance to detect planets, more Earth-like planets around red stars, because they are closer to the star. This is our technique allows. So first, those Earth-like planets, they are, most of them, around red stars. They're not around yellow stars. Because the habitable zone for us here, it's this distance between Sun and Earth, and the orbital period is 365 days. So we have to observe it at least 3 years continuously to confirm that it's there. So it's hard. But here the periods would be some tenths of days, and it's much easier to find it.
I have a question.
Yes?
Does it matter if the star, does it matter whichever color it is? Like if it's blue, can life still be there?
Yes,
like
it can be.
Does it matter what color it is?
It matters if you go to very extreme, it's like super hot stars and super cold stars. This would be hard. But say a bit like 2 times hotter than the sun and 2 times cooler than the sun. That's okay. Not too far.
It doesn't matter if it's blue.
If it's blue, but I'm saying that if it's blue, the planet should be further away from the star, because it's too hot. If you come closer to the star, it becomes too hot for the life. We bake up, We cannot be there. And for the red stars, we have to be closer, because it's too cold there. We have to come closer and heat us up. That's the idea. And if we find a planet and we say, we find planets at different distance, we can find planet here, here, and here, and these are not habitable just from a distance. If we find planet here, we say, oh, there is a chance that this planet has life. And we have few of those. We have only 6 of those at this point. Out of those more than 800, we found 6 potentially habitable planets within those, at those right distances from the star. Not so many. And this they order it in the order of Earth similarity. So this kind of image. So there is Earth here for comparison. This is all to scale. So this is Earth. This is like 2 times Earth. Yeah, not too bad. This is 2 times. This is almost like Earth. Only 20% larger, maybe. So I didn't check all of them, but these are certainly red stars. These Gliese, these are all 4 of them certainly red. I think they are all close. They are called cooler stars. These 2, I'm not sure, but 4 of them certainly around red stars.
Why does the size matter other than when it's too large, they're probably gaseous, but why would it matter
for this?
Life on it? Why is it
it's not...
Repeat the question.
Yes. So the question is, why does it matter for the planet to be similar to the Earth in size? Yes. So it's not so important, maybe, but if it's 2-3 masses or 2-3 sizes of the Earth, but if it becomes bigger, yes, it accretes more atmosphere, and then it will be like a very thick atmosphere and a smaller core there, solid core. So just the bigger mass, the more thick atmosphere. Yeah. So, and it's this our wish, to find it within Earth. It's just like this kind of selection of us. Yes.
So how many exoplanets have been found so far?
843.
What was the question?
The question is how many exoplanets were found.
Second part, if there's 800, why are we only seeing 6 in that habitable zone? And taking the solar system as a rough yardstick, it's sort of 10% of the planets are in the habitable zone.
The question is that...
Around the sun.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yes.
Yes. Taking that as
Exactly.
rough 10%.
The question is why out of 800 planets, only 6 are in habitable zone, while in the solar system we have 1 out of 9, yeah? Or 8, 1 out of 8. Yes. Okay, fine. I didn't vote for it. Anyway, so why is that? This is because of our observing techniques. We do expect that most stars have Earth-like planets in habitable zone, often, frequently, 10% or even more, something of that order. We just cannot detect them. This is our weakness here. Yes. And by the way, this recently published the closest to their sun planet around the closest the star to the sun, Alpha Centauri B exoplanets, closest exoplanets to us, let's say, Earth size. It's only 4 light years away. It's not in the habitable zone. Such a bummer. But, well, we're still searching. It's the period of this planet is 30 days. We're searching. We need more longer series of observations. We're searching, and we need many years of observations. We find them. The more we look, the more we find. And now that we have these 6 planets, we know what to do. Build bigger telescopes, detect light from those blue dots on the sky, get the spectra, get the methane, water, nitrous oxide, green leaf edges, everything. We know they're there. Yes?
Does it, like...
It's okay, you can think. All right, so let's go for it. How should it look like? That was one of the things. We know that we have green vegetation here, most of it. Yeah, we have flowers, beautiful flowers, different colors. but overall, most of the foliage is green. We don't know why exactly it is green, but we believe that we can measure, we can say that actually what happens with plants here, they actually reflect the maximum of brightness of the star. So our star has the maximum peak of luminosity, peak of brightness around green-yellow color, and that's what reflected by the plants. What the plant absorb, they absorb red light and they absorb blue light, but they reflect green light. And if we see yellow plant, it means that it reflects yellow light. If it's red plant, it reflects the red light, but it absorbs everything else on the side. And we don't know why they do that. We have to understand. This is the molecule chlorophyll. This is what it does. But if we look at other planets, there are different colors, as I said. There are blue stars, there are red stars. And we study that, whether organisms using light, so those photosynthetic organisms on those planets, they can use some other light. And if we make these analogs with our planet and our star, then we can see that actually on blue stars, if plants reflect the blue light as it is done here, like in our planet, then the colors can be of every other color than blue, like here. Pink palms, for instance, yeah, or red palms. And on the other hand, if for instance the light is too intense, because the blue stars are much hotter and the planet may be too close to the star, then the blue light can be completely reflected. And I said this is completely absorbed and this is completely reflected. So these two pictures can be both for blue stars. But if we go to red stars, then it's possible that to use the photosynthesis, to use all possible energy from that star, and those stars are cooler and fainter, and they don't produce so much light, those plants can absorb everything in the optical, so they can be black. And it's possible. Like here, this is all artist's impression. This is what also part of my work, to try to develop techniques how to detect photosynthetic organisms in different colors. And this is take-home messages. So what did we learn today? We look at early life on Earth and extremophiles. And these extremophiles, they teach us, they give us ideas how to search life on other planets. They provide the strategy for us. Then we look at Mars, and we think that there are conditions on Mars which could be similar in early history of Mars to the Earth, and there could be life still. There is still hope to find the life on Mars. Would you like to find life there? Would you like to see something on Mars? Yeah. Yes, and you will. I promise. Remember that. You will. We will find it. We find either fossilized or living. We will find it for sure. Let's be optimistic. Then we have other places in solar system, icy moons. Those oceans underneath the thick ice, they have water, they have organics. That's what we already know. We maybe send there cryobot or not, or maybe this will erupt again, as we see in Enceladus and some other moons, and we study those eruptions and we find them. We see there's organics there, so maybe there is organism. And of course, whenever we discover life, second chance, second type of life, another form of life, whether we create it in the lab artificially or whether we find it somewhere else in the universe, either of these will be very important for us to know that life is something not unique, something widespread, something normal for the universe. This is how I want to end. Thank you.